the government, in a monumentally stupid mistake, like this is categorically catastrophic for the U.S. Treasury for them to do this. They're there to facilitate the idiocy. Congress is there to get reelected, so just spend as much money as they need to.
Hello everyone, this is BTC Insight and welcome to yet another deep dive into BTC Insight. Before we jump in, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't yet. You won't want to miss this.
James Lavish begins by recounting a visit to Washington, D.C. a little over a year and a half ago. He and others had been meeting with congressional aides, senators, and policy teams to help them understand Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Not the hype, but the structural importance of blockchain assets in a rapidly changing monetary world. Contrary to the idea that Washington is clueless, Lavish says that many lawmakers do understand the stakes. In fact, he describes an experience inside one of his own senator's offices where aides were fully aware of the importance of stablecoins. They emphasized they had already met with major players such as Tether, and they understood how stablecoins fit into the broader objectives of the U.S. government, especially the Treasury.
Look, I was in Washington a little over a year and a half ago, and we were talking to congressional aides and congressmen, senators, Senate aides about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, and just trying to educate them a little bit about, what they are and why they're so important. And we got into one of my local senators' offices, and the aide was like, "Oh yeah, we met with Tether. We know how important this is. We understand how critical it is for us to embrace stablecoins because of the U.S. Treasury." So they got it. This is a long time ago, and they already get it. So what does a Genius Bill do? Well, it allows for stablecoins to be issued by these major banks under strict rules and regulations of the government, with very strict audit capability and all that. So no longer do you have Tethers just saying, "Well, we buy what we buy, just trust us." It's going to be like Circle, with Circle's like the gold standard for the audit of the underlying holdings of these stablecoins. But what are they? For the listeners who don't know, a stablecoin is it's a cryptocurrency that is pegged to something, anything. It could be pegged to gold, it could be pegged to copper, it could be pegged to rupee, whatever you want. But by and large, the vast majority of them are pegged to dollars, US dollars. And so why is this important? Well, it's important because exactly what you said, Ben, is that you can have access to an exchange that offers stable coins, Tether or Circle or something else, a USDC or something else, but if it's pegged to the US dollar, then you can effectively get dollars without actually having dollars, because it's pegged to it. It's pegged to the US dollar. So now if you want to hold your money in dollars rather than your local currency, if you're in Venezuela or Argentina or Egypt or somewhere where you have very high inflation, then you can hold it there and be pegged to the dollar and kind of protect your hard-earned money, currency, whatever, assets. Now, of course, we know the dollar is debasing, so it's not great, but it's debasing at a lower rate than most everything else. Then what do the stablecoin issuers do? They turn around and take that currency that they've been, that's been subscribed or bought with. They create the stable coin, and they go and buy U.S. dollars and U.S. treasuries. And so what the point of all of it is that it allows the U.S. Treasury to find pockets of liquidity for treasuries, for U.S. Treasury sales that they didn't have before. And there's a billion people across the world who are unbanked. If they're able to go and buy U.S. dollars, then they're effectively pushing them into U.S. Treasuries. It's another avenue to get people to buy treasuries. So was that Russian minister wrong about the U.S. pushing treasuries into the cloud and just revalue them? Yeah, they're not doing that. But what they are doing is they're finding pockets of liquidity to continue the charade that we've been talking about, which is debasing the US dollar with inflation, and finding people who will buy it because it's inflating at a lower rate than other people's currencies. It's effectively sucking the currency from foreign fiat creators, and it's just the playbook that Brent Johnson had laid out years and years ago with the dollar milkshake theory. And they're just using a long straw and sucking currency. They're sucking the money out of other fiats, and it's just going to end up in the dollar and end up in U.S. Treasuries. And that's kind of the playbook.
James Lavish begins by recounting a visit to Washington, D.C., a little over a year and a half ago. He and others had been meeting with congressional aides, senators, and policy teams to help them understand Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Not the hype, but the structural importance of blockchain assets in a rapidly changing monetary world. Contrary to the idea that Washington is clueless, Lavish says that many lawmakers do understand the stakes. In fact, he describes an experience inside one of his own senator's offices where aides were fully aware of the importance of stablecoins. They emphasized they had already met with major players such as Tether, and they understood how stablecoins fit into the broader objectives of the U.S. government, especially the Treasury.
Back when Russia invaded Ukraine and we turned around and we seized their assets, we seized their U.S. Treasuries, and we kicked them off SWIFT. What do you think Russia wants to do? And that's when you hear people talk about BRICS and creating their own currency, they're not going to be able to create their own currency, but what they're going to do is get away from the US dollar and US Treasury. Who wants to own US Treasuries when the government, in a monumentally stupid mistake, like this is categorically catastrophic for the US Treasury for them to do this, because they just signaled to the world that, hey, if we don't like what you do, we're gonna seize the treasuries that you have, and we're gonna kick you off SWIFT. And then the Treasury's sitting there going, wait, we need them to buy the treasuries. Like we need buyers of treasuries, or we can't facilitate this idiocy out of Congress of this endless spending, which is the whole point of the Treasury. They're there to facilitate the idiocy. Congress is there to get reelected, so just spend as much money as they need to. And then you've got Biden that turns around and cuts them off the SWIFT network, takes their treasuries, and everybody around the world who is not a very close ally of the U.S. government is saying, oh, shit, I don't think I want to own these treasuries. So they're looking for pockets of where to, so they're buying gold. It's not the U.S. playing with it. That's exactly what's happened. So we paint ourselves into this corner very, very eloquently. I mean, I couldn't have come up scripted a better way to do it. Like, how stupid was that? So, and here we are. Stablecoins, the bill prevents the stablecoin issuers from passing on the interest to the buyers.
Well, not to the buyers, but to the as an entity.
Sure, of course. Yeah, that makes perfect sense for them to do that. And they are doing it. I haven't spoken to Circle management, but of course they're looking for ways to maximize their own treasury, and that would make sense to me, and I would expect that to happen over time, but it is worth noting that these banks, it's insidious that they backdoored this, regulation into the Genius Act, where they're not allowed to pay out interest on these pegged stable coins. Yeah. Wow. Why? Because they're worried it's going to hurt the deposits and, in their banking system, and that'll hurt their ratios. And so they can't have that. So they don't want to. So now they've got a way to issue stable coins and turn around and reap the profits themselves, instead of passing them on to the consumers that are actually buying and taking the risk of those treasuries by having a stable coin.
He teaches us that stablecoins are no longer just tools of convenience. They've become a geopolitical instrument, that Washington is fully aware of the stakes, that the U.S. massively undermined itself when it weaponized treasuries. that global trust in the dollar system is weakening, and that stablecoins are now one of the few remaining mechanisms through which the U.S. can pull foreign capital into its increasingly fragile debt markets. But he also shows us why Bitcoin continues to grow, not because it's anti-dollar, but because it's outside the political system entirely.
That's it for today's look into BTC Insight. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay on top of all the latest insights. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we'll catch you in the next one.